Good evening, everyone. Welcome to CityLearn. It's so wonderful to see you here. This is a great topic. I will introduce some colleagues in just a minute, but a few reminders. We have folks joining us online. We've got quite a few tonight, so they'll have a chance to ask questions as well. If you could keep your questions to one at a time, and if we go a full circle, we can come back to you. There's going to be a lot of information tonight, so we'll make sure that we try to time Q&A as best we can. Right now, I'm going to start by introducing two of my colleagues. This is Natasha and Jeff. It's first name basis here. And you'll be hearing from them about some of our other transportation initiatives. So take it away. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Constance. All of you hear from me all the time. So attach a face to the name. Welcome.
No, it's green.
Green?
Green. Oop. Okay. Sorry, I'll calm down. Good evening again. Thank you all very much for being here. Appreciate your time. And we're very excited to provide, you're actually our first group that we're going to talk about our program called Walk, Ride, and Roll. And I'm Natasha, first name as Constance said. Next slide. Jeff is going to drive for me, and then we're going to change places. So Walk, Ride, and Roll, next slide, is 4 different programs that we're working on over the next 2 years. One is something that's required by state law. It's called the Commute Trip Reduction, and it's really trying to encourage people to get out of driving their cars alone. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. Jeff is going to focus on an exciting bike, scooter, e-bike, e-scooter pilot that we're going to be kicking off. And we're going to highlight shared use mobility hubs. And I think we'll just talk maybe a little bit about EV charging, but that's more to come. We're going to have a open house. I'm going to say this more than once on June 29th. So that's a save the date. There'll be a slide on that at the end. And we're going to have a survey, and we'll have a number of other events and activities that Jeff will be talking about. So I'm going to move into commute trip reduction. In 1991, we created a state law that was really focused on our employers and encouraging them to have people think about other ways to get to work besides driving alone. And this was looking at ways to help with air quality and traffic congestion and the reduction of petroleum fuels. Next slide. And we in the city of Shoreline have 7 employers that have over 100 employees that come to work between 8 and 5, basically. So initially, this was really focused on those sites, which are listed here, but they've just updated it and they're now expanding that. So they're asking for even more community involvement. What could you do? What could we do to help incentivize the city of Shoreline, as well as these employers and others, to provide you with some enticing options besides driving your car alone? And there's a survey that we're going to be talking about here in a minute to help encourage getting ideas about what we can do to support that. Next slide. So right now, our employers, some of them have programs like ORCA cards to support riding the bus or rail. There are options for encouraging carpooling, van pooling, as well as riding your bike or walking. COVID has actually helped a lot with compressed work weeks. We're talking to these employers right now and finding out, do you have showers? Are there bike racks or other things that we could be doing to help encourage that? Next slide. And I think what we're doing in terms of the state asking us to look beyond our 7 employers is for individuals, for residents. What can we do to help, I'm going to keep repeating this, to look for other things besides driving your car by yourself, because it's it's not only a benefit for the environment, but it's a benefit for your wallet, it's a benefit for your health. So we call that a triple win. And that's something that we'll be trying to promote more. The goal of this program is to have at least 4 out of every 10 commutes by means other than driving alone. We've already done the easy things. So what other things can you help us think of that could help people think of something that isn't comfortable and convenient, which is driving by yourself? What are things that we could be doing that would help you consider another option? That would help you consider an option that's good for our environment, that's better for your health, and helps your wallet. Next slide. And these are goals that also support our climate action plan, which we, I think it was a year ago now, we as a council identified a climate emergency. So the importance of helping people shift from driving alone is being emphasized by our city leadership as well. And I already mentioned that we're required to do a CTR affected work sites. Next slide. So you will see this QPR code advertised on campaign signs we'll be putting around, as well as on our website and other areas. We have a survey that should go live, I think, Jeff, by the end of the month, asking the questions I just asked. So driving alone is the focus, how to look for incentives to consider other options. And we have the June 29th open house date that I already mentioned. And I think that's it for Commute Trip Reduction. And then I'll turn it over to Jeff to drive the slides to talk about our bike and scooter share. Oh, you'll stay there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so along with the sort of focus on reducing trips, we want to expand as many travel options as possible in the city. And so light rail's coming to the city. We
Could you make sure you're speaking into the mic?
light rail is coming to the city, and we're expanding the various travel options that we want to test out. One of which is scooter and bike share. If you're not familiar with this, you can rent scooters and bikes by minute using a smartphone app. There's other ways to rent it as well, by phone or online. It's about $6 for a 10-minute ride, but there's also discounted rides for those on government assistance. And they need to be parked away from streets and sidewalks in areas, like the landscape strip between the sidewalk and the street, or other areas that don't obstruct other people. We're guiding it so that busy areas will have specific places where we focus on sort of the designated parking as much as we can. We're intent to launch this pilot this summer, test it out and see if it's safe, easily accessed by the community, and actually is expanding travel options. People are using it to get to transit, to get to work, do other trips. And there's a number of operators nationally. There's 3 that are still operating in Seattle. That's Lime, which is the green and white bikes, Bird, which is the blue and gray scooter, and then Veo Ride, which is another option that's in the Seattle area. And we want it to expand from Seattle into our city, but we don't want the full expansion as part of the pilot. So what we're doing is sort of capping the amount that are allowed into the city and observing over the 2-year period whether we can expand. So this supports, broader city goals to reduce greenhouse gases and fulfill the goals of our climate action plan, and as well as sort of transportation policies that we have in our local plan, our comprehensive plan, to expand ways to get around. The schedule, we are kicking it off now. We're updating the city codes around it to sort of guide what these operators can do and how the riders interact with our street network. We're selecting a vendor in the May through June timeframe. And then we intend to launch this pilot service in July, possibly into August. It's timed for the light rail station openings to ensure there is additional access to the stations. And the 2-year pilot really allows us to have enough data to inform any future investment, really investigate what works and what does not. And explore whether it's actually expanding trail options for the city. It's based on direction from our city leadership, our city council, and we are working with a number of stakeholders, including our police and fire folks and others at the city, beyond just our transportation services division. And then, of course, the public. We want it to be informed by the survey that's being launched. We intend to go out to the community with summer events in June and July in particular, and have some focus groups in different languages engaged around the Walk, Ride, Roll campaign. And there will be regular review for safety, community response, and making sure that the operator is responding to any concerns that the community has as it goes forward, and other considerations. I won't go into crazy detail here, but I said, there's 200 to 400 scooters. We're capping it at that amount. There's same reduced cost program as Seattle. We're going to start by not allowing them in parks, schools, and sort of fit places like Shoreline Community College, but ensuring that those areas do have designated zones for parking on the edges of them. And then the phasing we're looking into is possibly the first year we focus on the major transit hubs in the denser areas, and then we'll expand as we move forward with the program and assess it. We're also looking at where in the city are, folks that have mobility challenges getting accessibility services, and seeing whether the operator can prioritize those areas to make sure that there's no blockages of the sidewalks in those particular areas and other ramps. Looking into, so basically the removal or recovery of the bikes and scooters, having slow zones as possible, that you can regulate the engine to a particular speed and keep it down to a particular speed. And whether there'd be designated parking. This is all part of a broader vision for shared use mobility hubs. So there's these places, if you can imagine it, where all of the different types of transportation come together. The transit stations are a very good example of this, where the light rail and bus and bike share and scooter share and electric vehicle charging and other types of micro mobility and bike racks and other things to enable us to move about in different ways, all come to one location. So that's the most extreme case in the region, in the city, where it's sort of the regional connections, varying to slightly smaller investments that might just have the scooter and bike share and maybe some EV chargers and a local bus stop. But it still is that visible place in your neighborhood where you are connecting to the transportation system, and the way is to get to the bigger stuff like the light rail. So yeah, all of these features could be added to these particular hubs. We're actually advancing some concepts for this with the community this summer as part of this initiative, and we look forward to input on it. Thanks so much. So yeah, as Natasha was indicating, so there's to save the date. We intend to launch the survey. Maybe it isn't next week. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's a tad bit later. In May, we're engaging online regarding these mobility hubs we described. And then on June 29th, we hope to have an exciting event with an electric vehicle car share operator that's coming to Shoreline. It'll be at the Town and Country and the YMCA. And the operator that we select for the scooter and bike share, and discuss this sort of program of travel options and ways to reduce your drive alone trips in the city. Thanks so much. Any questions? Yeah. Micro transit. Did I
What
mention
is
micro
micro transit?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's varying types of bus or train service that you're all familiar with, but then micro transit is kind of a more on-demand bus service that's smaller vehicles. They can be sort of large van level vehicles that you can book through an app, for instance, just like you would a Lyft or Uber, but it's within a particular zone. So there's actually something called Metro Flex, which is one of these things. And if you want to contact me afterwards, we can talk it through a little bit more.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Regarding those shared bicycles and scooters.
Yes.
And have you thought about how do you get those bikes and scooters back to the core area? Say, for example, if you put 50 bikes
Mhm.
at light rail station, next morning there's 2 left. It's all over the neighborhood. They just, I get home, I park outside my home or on the sidewalk and I go home. So how do you going to collect that? Do you have a plan in place to do that?
So currently, we're going to be working with whoever the vendor, the business that's providing that service becomes. But in general, what is happening in Seattle is they have a daily look at what they call rebalancing. So moving it from one place to the other where you want them to be versus where they are present in your city. And so we will work with the vendor to define that, likely with the transit agencies to define that and where those locations are intended to be. And yeah, it's sort of a daily process or nightly process that they advance to assess where they are at the end of the day and then rebalance the system based on the priorities. But we're still shaping that and we'll be talking to those businesses shortly. All of them are tracked on GPS, yes.
Just 2 quick ones. The scope on the car share out of the gate, is there a vision for that? And then as far as bikes and scooters, do we have any lessons learned out of Seattle on the safety factor of no helmets? I'm always impressed with how fast the scooters go. I like the slow zone idea, but just seeing folks on those scooters and how fast they can go is concerning. Thank you.
It's a very important point. I think we're gonna be exploring this as a city, and that's the reason it's a pilot. Certainly, the operator themselves has helmet drives and provides free helmets to the community at certain events and things like that, in terms of encouraging it. They also require it as an operator, but that does not stop folks from not going on the scooters without them. Definitely want to be talking through that with the community and sort of observing what the safety risks are. And do you want to add?
Yeah, I would just, we've talked about this quite a bit. It's definitely a concern that we recognize. And I think educating our residents on the value of wearing the helmets they are required to wear, but educating them on the value, trying to make, having the ability to make them accessible are some of the strategies. I think also the benefit of the pilot is maybe we can see what's working, what's not working, if there are things that maybe we could be doing more of or less as we go through the pilot to try to get people to wear their helmets. I know it's a concern I have.
Yeah, we share the concern.
I have a question about parking. So I know, being with the water district, none of our employees live in Shoreline. In fact, a lot of those businesses that you listed with 100 employees or more do not live in Shoreline. Have you explored with neighboring communities about rideshare parking lots where several people who work in the same place can meet up outside the city of Shoreline to park some vehicles and bring one into Shoreline to report to work?
That is a great idea. That has not come up as an option here, but I have seen that. I know that that's done in other places.
No, so I'm
So-
thinking like places like Woodinville, Kenmore.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know several folks that are
Yeah.
coming out of Sultan and, up that way.
Right.
And every one of them
you.
is driving a big truck,
Mhm.
bringing it into Shoreline or their own passenger vehicle, but one person.
One of the things that thank you, going through and engaging the different employers is looking to see if there's ways to share common places of origin and connecting them. We just had I know of 2 different people from Monroe, for example. So what are ways to share information in a way that respects privacy, but allows for those opportunities to be realized? And that's a great idea of something that you could potentially do to help with that. Thank you.
I'd like to say I'm very excited about the scooters and the bikes. One concern, maybe this is more of a thought than a question is, I can't remember the last time I saw a rental bike or scooter that was upright. And when I used to work downtown, probably 1 out of 5 bikes, I would have to go to the app and ask for a refund because it was broken. So I'm wondering, do y'all have maybe stats from Seattle's program as far as how much time they're spending repairing? I know we don't have security cameras in Shoreline, so it's not like there'd be security in these spots, right?
Yeah, there's a significant data dashboard that Seattle has, and I have not dived in very explicitly on like repair statistics or anything like that, but there definitely are issues with that we want to be cognizant of going forward, and we'll be talking to the vendors themselves. And hopefully there is technology now that indicates whether the device has been tipped over or not. It's just a matter of holding the vendors accountable to the recovery times and other things like that. And we'll have fees associated with that.
And why do we want to keep them out of the community college?
It's not that we necessarily want to keep them out of the community college, and it could be that we work with the community college to designate, utilize that as a possibility. It's just that we haven't signed that and don't want to inundate them with a bunch of scooters yet without thinking it through with them collectively.
We have some online questions, if we could go to those, and then probably need to wrap this up pretty soon. I think this might have some connection with what you were just talking about. Irene asks, will the scooters have docking stations similar to Chicago's Divvy stations, so they are not just dumped to random locations?
So for the pilot, at least, we will have interoperability, meaning it will work together with Seattle's system. So that will not have docked, is what they call it, system where you have a designated location always. It's kind of a hybrid. So it's not fully dockless in that you can have particular areas like the light rail station, for instance, where it's red throughout the station to park them, except for a green spot on the app where you're allowed to park it, and then you assign, you stamp the concrete and put a sign to indicate where they're supposed to be. There's also financial incentives and other tools to utilize for that, but this will be a dockless system, at least for the pilot period.
Thank you. Somebody would like to know, isn't there a city ordinance regarding motorized scooters? Is that changing or no longer applicable?
There is. We are updating it to some extent to accommodate this scooter and bike share program, and we'll be exploring that with council in April 8th.
Yes.
And the 29th, April 8th, discussion and action on the 29th.
And one more, is there going to be any emphasis on safe bike and walking routes between the transit hubs?
There certainly is, and there's a lot of resource from a large RAISE grant that we acquired for a non-motorized bridge, as many are familiar, as well as an off-corridor bike network, and much of what Juniper will describe in her presentation. So perhaps that's a good transition.
One more question.
Okay.
Yeah, I never rode those scooters or bike, but when you say it's.
Mhm.
Oh, yes, you can use that one.
Hello? Oh, it's green. The scooters and the bicycles, you said it's $6 for 10 minutes?
That's a rough estimate, but yeah.
So when I'm living in the neighborhood, that sounds pretty expensive for me to take that just to ride to the light rail station.
I don't disagree that it's a bit of a costly trip. Yeah.
Because your whole idea is to incentivize people, so.
There are reduced costs for if you're on government assistance and things like
Yeah,
that.
a lot of people are, but my question is there a way, like, you know how in the old days you had a transfer pass when you ride the bus? If you take the scooter to go to light rail, can you have like a transfer pass so you don't feel like you're double paying just to do something right?
Yeah, the businesses do have certain multi-trip passes and other things like that, that incentivize cheaper trips.
Okay.
So will you please wait to roll this out until 145th is done? The idea of new bikers and scooter riders on the road with a whole lot of angry motorists that can't get from the east side to the west side to catch the 148th train may be a disaster waiting to happen.
I hear that, and I think what we want to do is provide our residents with options that are safe to the extent we can. People have their own choices. And I cannot say that we would wait until the 145th project is done. What I can say is that we would work hard to educate and provide access and locations and ways to get around. Because when that station is open, we'd like people to have choices on how to use it. But I hear what you're saying. I think the construction of 145th that's occurring, we're very excited about, and we also want to try to make that as safe as possible.
Is there a minimum age that you have to be to ride the bikes
Good
and
question.
scooters?
Yeah, it's a good question. State law has a lower age threshold. It's actually not the city that will set this age threshold. It'll be the vendor themselves, and most of them are setting it at 18. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you doing this because I would have probably been lost as I tried to figure it out.
The other one first. Other one first.
Right.
Well, we're getting set up here. My name is Juniper Nami. I'm the City of Shoreline Light Rail Project Manager. I do work for the city, not Sound Transit, but my job is to make sure they get their job done right. I'm going to turn it over first to Eric Ashley Vinca. He's the Director of Government and Community Relations for the North Corridor. And he'll talk to you from Sound Transit's perspective.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. Really appreciate everybody coming out to see this. I'll start off by saying that I'm a Shoreline resident as well, and this is probably my most excited I've ever been for any project with Sound Transit, because we're on the precipice of opening. Oh, how does this?
Down.
I'm doing down. It doesn't work. Let's try. No. It does not want to work. Well, so while we're figuring that out, my name is Eric Ashley Vinca. I'm the Government and Community Relations Director for Sound Transit on the North Corridor. And what I want to thank you. What was the magic button? Today, I'm here to talk to you about all these things. Really, I think the question probably most people are going to have is, when does this thing open? And I won't give you the date today, but I can tell you we're close. Really just want to touch on where we've been in this project, what needs to finish before we actually wrap up and start revenue service later this year. Talk a little bit about the transit connections. It was really nice to have the presentation prior to this because all those connections on how you get to light rail are going to make this thing work. If you can't get there, whether it's by walking, riding, driving, rideshare services, all those things play into this, and we really have to work together to get there and make it work. So I'll start off by just saying thank you to the city for making this happen because it's taken a lot of work and we appreciate it. So I'll start off with a little bit, just a high level of what the project is. As you can see here on the map, can everybody see this good in the room? It's 8.5 miles of service added to the one line, which currently serves Angle Lake to Northgate. This will be 4 new stations that will connect, where Lynnwood Link will have a northern terminus at Lynnwood City Center here on the north, going down to the second station, Mount Lake Terrace, which is at the transit center, and then 2 stations here in Shoreline, North Station and the South Station, north being at 185th and south being at 148th. In addition to those 4 stations, we'll also have a 5th station that's not connected to this project, but will be part of the line. If you can see the cursor here at Northeast 130th Street, is a separate project that'll be set to open mid-2026. Thing that I just highlight here is that we're gonna have parking on this. This isn't always the case on some of these projects. So you'll see parking at every single one of these stations. I know people not everyone's going to get there by bus or by bike. And so we recognize there are going to be people that want to drive. So there will be parking at each of these, and I'll talk about those a little bit. This is my favorite slide because it shows how far we've come. If you look here to the left, 2010, we started really the planning, the preliminary engineering and environmental work on this project. And we're right here today, all the way to the far right. And we're really just finishing the system startup. Construction right now, we're at about 97%. And so over the next month or so, we're going to be wrapping all that up and really getting into the systems testing. And so that's just a testament to the work that we've been trying to get done here, even with a concrete strike and COVID kind of changing how people commute. We've worked through that to get to the point where we're at today. So I'm going to talk just about the two stations, and then I think Juniper will probably go into a little bit more detail. So I'll do the high level. If you look here on the left, you'll see an aerial rendering. This is one of the first sketches we did long ago, showing you what the station would look like. To the right, you'll see this aerial photo that was taken last summer. If you look at it today from an aerial photo, if we show a video, you'll see it. It's basically done. And so that's really exciting because it's going to be open very soon. As you can see, this parking structure here, that's what that is. That's a new parking garage that'll supply 500 spaces at the station. You'll see here the little bus loop where people will get dropped off by the bus, and then the platform's right there adjacent to the freeway. Here's the next station moving to Shoreline North at 185th. You can see the rendering of the platform there. This is at grade, but separated from the road. So you look at the right and you can see a picture that we took on Monday just to see how far it has really come. I mean, those cones are there just kind of to keep people out of harm's way, but we're wrapping everything up. This station will also have 500 parking stalls, and I'll let you talk about the 148th pedestrian bridge, but that's at 148th, sorry. So one thing that I want to talk about with this group is rider safety. I think when I talk to the community, especially my own neighbors, safety comes up a lot. What exactly are you doing at Sound Transit to make it safe? This slide is far too busy for anyone that's in this room to have to read. Don't worry about it. It's just for online looking later. But what I want to point out is if you look here to the right, there's two highlighted numbers, and I'll tell you what they are. We had 192 people on our security team in 2022. Fast forward to 2023, we bumped that almost nearly double to 546 people. What this table shows is the progression of, as we bring light rail stations online, what are we doing on that security front? COVID changed how people rode and used public transit. We had to pivot and figure out what this looks like going forward. So we've made changes. We brought on 4 different security contracts last year to address all facets of the stations, because it's not as simple as if we have a nuisance at a station, we kick you off into the city and that's it. We have to make sure that we're working with our partners, make sure that people are safe, getting to and from that light rail station. The second thing that I would point out on this is this text in orange at the bottom. For anyone that is riding light rail or will ride light rail, I would encourage you to put this number in your phone. It's 206-398-5268. It's posted on our trains. It's posted on the buses. I think it's posted on the buses. It's been a while. But if you see anything, if you see something that seems strange, if you see someone actually being aggressive, any of those things that you might worry about when you're anywhere, but especially on light rail because you're in an enclosed space, text the number. I've used it. I've seen it in use. And essentially, if you see something and you text, by the next stop, we'll have security there if there's not already security on the train, and it works. And that's the thing that I want to reassure with people is that there are people, and we continue to work in those busy areas, downtown Seattle with King County sheriffs to make sure that if we need extra presence, we have that. And so I think during the pandemic, we kind of got lost in what the need was because not as many people were riding, and we were trying to figure out what that looked like. Yeah, I don't know if It's for buses and it's Sound Transit only. That's the Sound Transit number, but it's for buses or trains. So any ST bus that you're on. I don't know if it's posted on the ST buses, but I'm pretty sure it is. So having said that, let's talk a little bit about construction. This is similar to that baseline slide that I showed earlier. We use this typically for the elevated station just to show where we've been. We've used these since the beginning of the open houses that we did years ago. But this just kind of reiterates, what we're doing, what we've done between Q2 of last year and where we're at right now. I think the exciting thing about this is that 97% number, and what that means for us is moving into the systems testing. And so that's well underway, and that'll be the thing that I talk a little bit about next in the next slide. This is for the transit nerds, the engineers, the people that like to get a little insight on the technical stuff. These three pictures here just show some of the systems construction work. On the left picture here is the overhead catenary system. That's OCS to us in the business, and essentially that's what helps power the system. Working with Seattle City Light, SNOPUD, it was last fall, I believe, we put this to power, and so that's what makes the system go. The next picture shows the signaling systems being installed. That we've got a worker doing this, and essentially this is what helps track the changes. And when we're moving trains, they know what's coming so that you don't have trains running into each other. And that's pretty standard safety stuff. And then finally, the picture on the right is the communication system. That's essentially the fiber, the copper that's being put in, for the, I think that's signaling as well, just for the communication link of this. And the reason I show this is all the work that you don't necessarily see on a day-to-day basis. And as that work is being done, you'll start to see trains, and people say, how come we're not open? How come there's trains? Well, it's because we have to test for safety. I tried so hard, and I should have talked to Juniper about this, to get some pictures of the trains on the tracks here in Shoreline. Yeah, I think I have one too. Unfortunately, I have to show you trains from up north at Mount Lake Terrace. But these were taken back in November. These were some of the first trains we put on the track. You see unpowered car clearance tow here on the left. You can see the truck up there if you kind of squint. But essentially what we do is we take the tow vehicle there and then take the light rail vehicle and look for clearance issues. Here on the right is one of the first test cars that we had out there on its own. And there will be a lot more of that between now and then. We've been doing a lot of night testing over the past 2 months, really just to get those things that you can't see in the day, whether it's sparks on the tracks, things that you might not see. But over the next couple of months, it's going to be trains on the tracks, and you'll see simulated revenue service, so it looks like there's actually trains going. So I've talked a little bit about that. I think upcoming activities between now and revenue service, the main focus is going to be on, testing and certification, making sure that our drivers understand the new alignment and know how to navigate it. There's real people that operate these things, and it's very important that they keep you safe. And in a few, I guess the announcement, I'll just say it now, in the next week or two is we will have a revenue service date for the public. We've been saying late summer, early fall. That's tracking with what we're expecting. A huge shout out to all our partners for getting us to this point. It's a reality, and I couldn't be more excited about it. So I've taken up too much time, so I'm going to kind of get through this really quickly. I'm going to talk about the transit connections between our partners. Sound Transit doesn't operate the service that you're on if you're at King County Metro, if you're taking one of their buses, if you're on a community transit bus. That often gets lost on folks. But importantly, we have to work together to make that system as seamless as possible. If we don't, your ride isn't good. I want you to be able to get on a bus, in Everett and get to a light rail station in Snohomish County, and it feels like it's one service. And so in order to do that, we have to work constantly and for long amounts of time with our partners. This is a slide that I hope can go out to the group, because this link down here on the bottom left opens up this fancy map that no one can see on the screen today. But what it does show is the plans that King County Metro have put in place to work with our system when it comes online later this fall. The 333, the 348 buses, that I think some of us folks here in Shoreline would use, get tweaked around here. And the whole purpose of that is to get you east and west to the light rail stations. I think if most people get on more than what, you know, if they get on a 3-seat ride, they may not ride. And what that means is if you have to get from one bus to another, whatever it is, it makes it a lot harder. So we've worked over the past year, really more with our partners to make sure that we're ensuring that that's happening and that there's better connections. The mention of scooters, that's a really good piece to it, because there's going to be times where someone doesn't catch a bus and they do just want to pay $6 to get across town. I've done it, and it's super helpful when you need it. Community transit, one thing that I'll just point out, I mean, both of these have been great partners, but the blue line will eventually connect to the North 185th station. That's a huge deal, because then all the people that are up here will be able to come down south and not terminate at Aurora Village, but actually get to the light rail station when that opens. And so with that, I'll just say, coming down the pike after this, we've got Stride Bus Rapid Transit coming online. I'm sure we'll come back to the council to talk about it at some point. But essentially, that'll be a Bothell to Shoreline connection to the light rail station and provide, you know, north of the lake, a really fast and efficient ride. So with that, I'm going to pass things over to Juniper, and then we'll get into some questions after.
Right, I do have an online question for you
sure.
before you go.
If that's all right.
Is security really working? I've seen them talk to people, but not put them off the train. So your experience with that?
Well, I mean, I think security has a really hard job. I don't know if anyone in this room could do that job. It's extremely difficult. So they have to assess threats, assess any situation. If I text and say somebody looks funny, that doesn't necessarily mean that they can remove someone from a train. I think that it's working in the sense that people are there. The number works. And so what I would, you know, hopefully ask is, if you have an experience and the security doesn't step up, let Sound Transit know. Let us know how we can do better. This is not something we do in a vacuum. So it's really important that we work together. Hope that answers your question.
It does. And one other one that's just come in, and I think probably Juniper will answer this. Curious if there's anyone there tonight who can speak to when 5th Avenue Northeast, just south of 145th in Seattle, will open back up to car traffic.
You mean at 5th Avenue at 185th or 145th?
145th.
Okay. Oh, down. Yes, I can answer that.
Okay.
I will get to it a little later. Again, my name is Juniper. I am a Shoreline resident. I've worked for the city since 2006, and I've been working on this project since 2016. What you didn't show on your timeline is that the voters actually approved ST2 in 2008. And so it has been a long time in coming. It is so exciting to get here. And I must say that when I saw this, I squealed. This is standing at the 155th, the fire station on 155th, watching one of the dead toe tests happen where they're making sure that the track is clear enough. I'll just run that one more time. The trains are there. It's so exciting. As the online person asked, 5th Avenue south of Shoreline has been close to southbound traffic. It will stay close to southbound traffic. It will not be reopening for southbound travel. What will be built, a combination of the 130th station and the interchange project, will be new bike ped facilities that will take up what the southbound lane had before. Northbound traffic from further south from the 130th station, I believe, will reopen, but I can look to Natasha or Eric to see if you know. From 130th up to 145th, northbound will reopen, won't it?
From Northgate, Jennifer.
Yes. Yes, it will eventually reopen northbound after the interchange is done, right? Okay. And the 130th station. In terms of right here in Shoreline, there are, starting tonight, some periodic nightly closures of Fifth Avenue in front of at the Shoreline South 148 station. And that's for them to finish reconfiguring and building new islands in Fifth Avenue for 2 new signals. There'll be one at 148 at the entrance to the station, and there'll be one at the northbound on-ramp as part of the interchange. And those will be timed so they work together. The Fifth Avenue from 175th to 185th has been closed right at 185th for quite a while. I'm waiting any day to get the traffic control plan so that that can get reopened, hopefully in the next week or so. Shortly after that, they do have to do a full closure of 185th at 8th in order to finish the new roundabout and first full roundabout in Shoreline, I believe. That will be about 3 weeks long to finish the concrete and paving in that area. Couple other things they got to do along the way, but at most 3 weeks. There will be another signal at 185th and 5th, where again, the buses will be going into the top of the parking garage where the transit loop is going to be located. So those signals will come online probably in the next 2 months, probably April is when I would expect to see those come online. And they're working feverishly to finish all the street ends and portions of street that have been closed in our local neighborhoods. And those as well will be finishing up in March and April and reopening to the public. All right, I'm gonna step through a bunch of those new sidewalks and street ends just to highlight the bits and pieces that Sound Transit had to build that our capital improvement program and long-term non-motorized transportation planning will eventually connect together into longer trails. On the left is 195th, widened and improved access onto the 195th Ped Bike Bridge. There's a hammerhead at that street end now, so it's easier to turn around as well. In the middle is looking across 8th Avenue and 185th towards the garage. It's a 2-story garage, as I mentioned, with the transit loop on top. On the left in the lighter green is the elevators to get down. The platform is at grade and it's below 185th. It goes underneath the street there. And there's a main entrance on the south end there into both the north and south platforms because the train tracks are in the middle of the platforms. If you're getting off a bus, you can go over a bridge from the north end of the transit loop to the north end of the platforms and get down. There's an overcrossing so you can get down to either the north or southbound platforms easily. You got a nice aerial view of the roundabout halfway through completion. That was before it opened to 2-way traffic. Moving on to the Shoreline North Station, we're looking south at both platforms from the middle of the tracks in that photo there. On the left, it's a little hard to see. There's a yellow arrow on the outside there. They're building 14-foot sidewalks on 185th and 8th. It will actually connect going north to sidewalks that the private development Connect at Shoreline is building. And so you'll have a continuous from actually 180th all the way up to 189th will be shared use sidewalk or pathway, which is a nice long chunk of our future trail along the rail, which I'll go into a little more detail on in a moment. There are also pathways through. If you wanted to go down the stairs and through the plaza, you could go all the way north without being out on the street. There is a pickup drop-off loop right in front of the garage, and the entrance to the garage is at the northeast corner off of 8th Avenue. Trail along the rail is a vision that the city has for a 2.5-mile stretch of trail, a lot like the interurban trail, but parallel to the train tracks, roughly speaking. Where Sound Transit had to build new sidewalks as they rebuilt or touched our roadways, we negotiated to have them build shared use paths and extend it as long as we could in a number of places. This is on our website under Trail Along the Rail or in the presentation if it's made available later. The green and white checked locations with the numbers on them are where Sound Transit is building short segments of shared use path. A little bit more work for Jeff and Natasha to get funding in order to do master planning for the rest of it. And stitch together the pieces that Sound Transit's built. Working with Sound Transit to negotiate some trades of street ends for easements for trail in spaces where it's got to be free of trees anyway, so there's no risk of trees falling on those overhead catenary lines that he mentioned. So it becomes a real nice space to put a trail through. So we're negotiating now for some of those easements that we'll need to eventually build the rest of the trail on. Let's see here. So here's some of the segments that Sound Transit's built. On the very left, you've got 185th at the very top of the photo, and there's a wiggly asphalt path right next to the train tracks that is extending from 185th all the way to 180th. So we got 5 blocks of trail. It connects to a few bits of sidewalk that Sound Transit had to build on 5th. But it also connects to sidewalks that were built half with money from Sound Transit to improve access within a quarter mile of the stations, and half with other funds that I'm sure Natasha had a hand in getting grants and resources for. And so there you can get from 180th, you can go out to the street in bike lanes or walk down the sidewalks all the way to 175th. 10 blocks complete. There's more trail that we want to do parallel to the tracks between 180th and 175th, but that's a future looking project to work on. You can see in the right-hand photo, going off to the right into the tree is a 10-foot sidewalk that was built to connect the end of the trail out to 5th Avenue at 180th. Ridgecrest Park, I heard at least one person mentioning it's closed right now. This is one of 2 parks that were significantly impacted by the light rail project, but Sound Transit doesn't have the park closed right now. The city does. It is one of the park spawn projects funded by the residents here in Shoreline. And in the next photo, I'm gonna just point real quick. On the left is before. We had a gravel parking lot, old drinking fountain, ball field, and the racquetball courts. This is during construction. Sound Transit had to replace the gravel parking lot with new parking stalls, and they had to replace land that they were acquiring for the tracks with new land for that parking lot. So the park actually got about 7,000 square feet bigger. So no overall net win for the city in that regard. And right now, you can see a bunch of cars and trailers parked on that parking lot. And the city is improving the access into the park. The racquetball courts are staying. In the background there, you can see the beginnings of the fence for the dog park. And Sound Transit still has to put in a new sign identifying the park, a new drinking fountain that will have a little doggy bowl attached. And they're going to finish landscaping here. Interesting thing here is that the city contributed additional funds to turn a noise wall into a retaining wall. So when we have the funding to do it, we can put dirt right up against that wall and run the trail that you can see the beginning of right down here near the cul-de-sac, that you run that trail right up. And there's the grades will work. We've already done some preliminary engineering to get it all the way through to 165th. 161st turned into a cul-de-sac. It is no longer a through street down to 159th or 158th. Instead, we've got a shared use path only, making that connection south. And this is looking from on the right-hand side, looking from about 159th up towards the cul-de-sac at the top, and Ridgecrest Park is just there in the distance. So we've got about 2 blocks worth of trail in that segment there, and preparation for extending it further. On the left is a segment of shared use asphalt path along First Avenue from 174th near the library down to mid-block about where 173rd or 172nd would come through. But there is new right-of-way land available for the city to then extend that down, and it would wiggle out away from the tracks at 170th and eventually come back in closer. And then this is a segment from 151st up to where 156 a third approximately would come through where Sound Transit had to build a 10-foot wide shared use sidewalk. Third Avenue didn't used to go through here. There's a new development off the screen, new apartment buildings, because this area is rezoned MUR 70. And another one waiting for the permits to be picked up. That connects right into the city's non-motorized bridge project. On the right-hand side is plan view with north to the top. The yellow arrow here at the top connects into the forms for the sidewalk right here at 151st and continues right on down into the station, Shoreline South 148 station at the north side of the station there. So you can come in on 152nd, head all the way down and into the station site. And in 2026, you can head over the bridge across I-5 over to First Avenue. There's also a narrower path that goes from the station site to 148th, and there's a couple of developments already in the permitting stages for 149th Street. Okay, that is good to know. Let me see. Oh, that is not what I wanted to do. That's okay, though. Oh, okay. Pointer, how do I do that? Okay, I could also do this. Which button is it?
The top.
Very, very top button. Okay, let me go back a slide. Hang on, this way. There we go. So made the mic and the pointer. Okay, right up here, this is 152nd. Sorry, that's 151st right there. Up here, this is 152nd. This is 151st. So Sound Transit's building from 151st past 152nd up to a property that they have a storm drain facility, detention facility on. With one easement and a little more funds, we hope to be able to head through that property and connect with private development, building a sidewalk to the end of 2nd and out to 155th. So we're like one parcel away from being able to get from 145th all the way up to 155th. After the city's projects are done. So the bridge project just got started construction right at the end of December, right before the power was turned on permanently so that we could do our drills without being at risk of hitting those power lines. Let's see here. Does that work? Okay, here's a rendering of the bridge, and the trails that I was pointing at in yellow are this one right here that goes from the station site down to 149th. And the bigger one here goes out to the bridge across and north up to 151st, 152nd, and eventually to 155th. On the right-hand side is a photo of sidewalks the city built, again, with access funds from the light rail project to make it safer to get down First Avenue on the west side of I-5. This wide tactile strip is the crosswalk where the bridge will come out on the west side of I-5 to connect to those sidewalks and connecting the east and the west here. Okay, and then just moving a little further south, this is the South Station site. March 5th is when this picture was taken from the south instead of the north that Eric had. So on the right-hand side is where those two trails come in from 149th and from the bridge and further north. Blue arrows are showing the routes into the station from 5th Avenue. And there's shared use 14-foot wide path. Going north from here, it transitions into bike lanes. The interchange project picks up at that northbound on-ramp intersection and will continue the 14-foot sidewalk on the west side of 5th to 145th. And as I mentioned, bike ped facilities on 5th Avenue, continuing on south to Northgate once 130th station and the city's interchange project are done. Let's see. And interchange project, I hope you've all heard about it. Our contractor just mobilized last month to start work on the west side of I-5. two projects in one. It is both building two roundabouts in lieu of the two signals that are at the 145th interchange from I-5. And doing the first segment to, what is that street? Do you know? First, over to First, thank you, First Avenue on the west side of I-5, building new sidewalks and improving the traffic flow through that area. It connects on the east side of the interchange. It will connect into the improvements that Sound Transit will build for the bus rapid transit stride line that he mentioned from Bothell to from 6th Avenue east of the interchange, yes. So that work kicks off, I believe, in 26 or 27,
For
the BRT construction.
Green Line, I say it's 27.
Okay.
Yeah.
Early work in 6, main construction of the new bus stops along 145th and up Bothell Way in 2027. So that line will have a terminus at the Shoreline South 148th station. You can see off to the left in the yellow areas all the way out to Aurora, the city has plans for phase 2 and a phase 3 of improving 145th corridor. And some other time, Jeff can tell you about the off corridor bike networks that we have planned for this area. And just cycling back all the way to the beginning, Sound Transit did impact some wetlands and shoreline right next to the fire station. And relatively low quality isolated, they don't have streams running through them. And we were able to negotiate with Sound Transit and our surface water group and our parks department to have the mitigation occur at Ronald Bog Park, which is on 175th. If you get a chance to stop by, I strongly recommend it. There's some nice gravel paths there. Lots of wildlife. There's a bus stop there that features some wildlife photography from a local resident of animals on Ronald Bog. Otters, eagles getting ducklings occasionally, lots of other birds and wildlife. And the artwork, there's a sculpture there called the Kiss that has been shifted over. It's a little more visible. Arboretum that the Rotary Club has there, has some trees in memory of various members of that club as well. It turned what was Japanese knotweed and blackberry into very functional, high quality wetlands. So we got, again, better than what we lost. In my opinion, the functions and values that are achieved here are incredible. It was also a very contaminated site. They pulled out debris and materials from what appeared to have been a gas station, including a bathroom sink and a toilet. This doesn't do it justice. You can kind of see there's two lobes, one here on the west and a bigger one over here on the east, new areas of open water on both of these and wildlife snags. So they got to remove trees and then put them back up for bats and birds and insects to live in. But a very exciting project that I'm very proud to have worked with Sound Transit on. Thank you very much for listening. I can't wait to ride the trains with you all. This is just a photo from when Senator Patty Murray came to celebrate the RAISE $20 million RAISE grant that is helping to fund the non-motorized improvements, part of the bridge project, part of the sidewalks along the corridor of 145th as well. Thank you. And questions?
I've got a question for Eric. Have you ever ridden, well, I'm sure you have, ridden the North Gate going south, like on a game day or concert day, and you get to like Cap Hill and those people cannot get on the train? And so I'm curious, will all of the southbound trains start from Lynnwood? Because I feel like there's only so many cars you could add to the
Yeah, so
platforms.
that's a great question. Because I'll give some background here without going too much into it, but the 1 and the 2 line will eventually run along the Lynnwood link, right? So the 2 line goes from Lynnwood all the way out to Redmond. As we were constructing the first light rail floating bridge over I-90, We got to a point where we had some problems with concrete plinths, basically what the tracks are sitting on. The contractor had to go back and replace all of those. So Eastlink was supposed to open, the full thing should have been open, kind of around the same time that it's opening here in a month. We're gonna have to open that later next year so that trains can get from Lynnwood all the way across the water. Until then, we're gonna have this little segment that does 8 stations between, Microsoft and Mercer Island. You've heard that maybe called the starter line. That's gonna run. And why does this matter? Because there's an operation and maintenance facility on the east side that is necessary for us to service the trains so that we can have the number of trains we had anticipated. When revenue service opens later this year, we're gonna have 8 to 12 minute headways. So that means every 8 to 12 minutes, a train will be coming through each station. Once the 2 line opens and we have access to the operation and maintenance facility so we can work on all the trains, we reduce that to 4 to 7 minute headways. 4 minutes, the ultimate goal, but things happen. We have to make sure that, trains are clean, all that stuff happens. But that's where we're going. So what I'm getting to is that as we navigate what this looks like when we first open later this year, our team has been looking at how we can inject service in during those peak times. So we have, whether it's, 3 car train sets and then followed by another car. So we have more trains on the tracks. Because the reality of having this starter line over on the east side is that you have the 1 line at capacity regardless until we get over to the operation and maintenance facility. So does that answer the question? I mean, it's a thing that we have to work on, and we're still testing right now to figure out what that's going to look like when we open. But the idea is that we think we can do a really good job at injecting trains where needed.
While she's walking around, I forgot to mention there are public restrooms at both stations. They are locked and controlled by their security with a video hey, can I get in kind of a setup? But there will be safe, clean restrooms in case you got a kid or myself needing to use the restroom before you hop off or on the train. The other thing is that both stations do have public artwork that will be put in the relatively near future. Go ahead.
I have a question for Eric as well. Have you or will you considered to have express lane or express service in the future? I know. Do we have the capability on the infrastructure to do that? Because I'm recently traveled to Japan and New York City. They both have like from Lynnwood to airport. I don't know, once they open, how long it takes, hour and 20 minutes? Can we reduce it to like 40 minutes, maybe in the future?
So what you're asking is if we could have like a rapid line, right?
Rapid
And,
line, on same line, but I would imagine you have to have the track to have 2 lines together.
And it's single tracking, so that poses the problem there, is that we can't, one can't pass another one up that's already there. I could talk at length about this, but I'll just leave it at that. I mean, it's a challenge, but right now that's the system that we have.
Thanks. I was curious about the study of traffic flow around the stations after they open. And is that something that Sound Transit's going to do? And then sort of the mitigations that could happen, or just how are we going to look at that? And of course, that leads to parking, which is another out of scope for maybe tonight. But then also curious about if there's been thought to lower the speed limit for vehicles around the stationaries as we mix modes, especially on 10th, 185th, sections of arterials where it could be a safety aspect.
Let's see, I'm gonna start with the last one first. Speed limit, I believe on 185th is 25. And I believe the recommended slowing down in that in the roundabout and the signals will actually slow traffic in that area. Beyond that, I'd say talk to Kendra Dudinsky, our traffic engineer. There's very specific thresholds for when you make decisions like that. flow. Okay, so there are two conditions in the special use permit for the light rail project. One is addressing cut-through traffic around both stations. The other one is addressing what is kindly termed as hide and ride parking, where people find the garage full and park in the nearest neighborhood. City is standing up a parking enforcement program. So we're in the process of deciding what to enforce, hiring enforcement officers, getting parking ticket kind of vehicles. And that's being worked on this year. Sound Transit gets to do a before and after study for both traffic and for parking. They have to look at how much parking is available, how it's being used beforehand, how much is available after, within 3 months of opening, and then try to account for where those cars are coming from and what percentage can be attributed to the transit. Similarly, they'll have to look at traffic pattern changes before and after to again account for can any of that be attributed to the transit stations opening up? It's of course complicated by private development, the interchange development, a lot of factors going on, but that's why we hire professionals. And so Sound Transit is just getting those contracts in place and will be starting their preliminary studies. You won't see changes related to that until 6 months to a year after. In part because we want to make sure we're targeting it correctly. If we just throw stuff out there, it might create more hassle and difficulty for everybody living there than it's and more problems rather than alleviating the potential impacts of light rail.
And just to add on to that, I since they're not here tonight, I'd say the city council has really paid close attention to this. They're very concerned about that. And so they've pushed Sound Transit. They've made sure that we're working closely with city staff on this so that we do get the best result.
Garage is going to be free. Is that going to be free parking?
It's free at the moment. The board has been exploring, what that might look like in the future. I think, especially when you go to the ends of system, Lynnwood, for example, where there's a much bigger parking garage, but you'll have cars outside of the Sound Transit area kind of descending into there. And so how we make that fair, but that's going to be a long discussion of the board, and it's public as it happens. So.
And hopefully incentivizing carpool parking there too.
Yeah, well, in carpool, that'll probably be one of the first things that it's already existing in a lot of places. So we kind of dialed it back with COVID and are kind of getting back into the new normal, so to speak.
They did build the garages forward compatible with toll for future consideration. Let's see here. Any other questions for us? I think we're running out of time in the evening here.
Will there be electric charging stations in these garages?
God, I should really know that one.
No.
Okay.
However, they have been designed to have the capacity in their electric system to add them later. But they were not required to put them in at the get-go. They are required to reach out to car share programs, see what the market is, and potentially set up a certain percentage of the stalls as car share designated.
Hi, I have a question about development around the stations. I don't know if you're the right people to ask. I live near one of the stations, and I've seen a number of lots get bought by developers. And I'm wondering, are there any regulations, like as new developments go in, that they provide sidewalks, better street lighting? What kind of
Yes.
changes might we see in our neighborhoods with new private developments?
Yes, so our redevelopment does require new sidewalks, bike lanes, storm drain facilities that are actually going to detain and treat water to a higher level than Sound Transit had to, because the rules changed right after they got their permits in. But they're required to manage stormwater to a very high level. Oftentimes, even though it seems like all the trees are going away, they are putting a large number of trees back. They often have to underground, actually, they do have to underground the power and telecoms, so those pesky power lines go away. They do have to account for a certain percentage of parking in their buildings. However, they get a reduction for being close to light rail. The ones that are immediately adjacent to the light rail stations get basically can build on more of the lot if they are connected to and have some of their space face towards the light rail stations. We call it transit oriented development. And the building that's under construction at the Shoreline North 185th station does that. It has a retail space that connects out. The building that is ready to issue permits, but is having issues with financing right next to the Shoreline South 148 station also has some commercial space that connects directly to, and the ability for activation of the transit space by having people see it and freely be able to go through rather than having to walk all the way around to a different door.
Park fees as well?
Yes, so all of the big redevelopment has some other, there's park impact fees, transportation impact fees, and totally blanking. Yes, there's fire related fees. There's something else I was.
A lot of boxes are checked on that.
A lot of, affordable housing. So, there's trade-offs or extra things they can do if they opt in. They get, I think, a tax exemption for a certain number of years if they opt in for 20% AMI affordable housing for 100 years. You get 20 years of tax waivers. Anyway, it's complicated, but my understanding is it's one of the most aggressive programs in the region. Not necessarily as far as we should go, in my personal opinion, but it is setting the precedent for other cities in the region from an affordable housing perspective.
So quick question. It was planned that there were going to be bike lockers at both stations. Is
Yep.
that still in the mix?
Yes, there's both short-term and long-term bike parking. Short-term being the ride up, lock it up. There are also bike lockers for longer-term protected parking. They're 2-story. And the upper ones have a lift assist that puts your bike up inside, and they're powered primarily with small scale solar backup, so they still work if that's not working, but they did have to put in some small scale solar for those. And there's room at both station sites to effectively double the capacity for both short-term and long-term bike parking. They've pre-planned where those would go.
You answered my question there, because I was gonna ask that very thing.
On the garages, will there be security cameras, and can you park overnight? Because I'm wondering if people are gonna like go to the airport and leave their car for a week.
We don't allow overnight parking as far as I understand. We do have cameras in 148th. I assume that we have cameras in all of them now, but.
Yes. My understanding is Shoreline North 185th will also have on-site security during hours of operation because of the style of garage that it is, being underground. And I believe the garages closes the same hours that the light rail system is shut down for the night, so 4 hours at night when it's closed. I don't know what your enforcement is for getting cars out of there, or if they just can't get to them.
It's enforced. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're sticklers about right at time, but.
Let's see, I'll mention that the Shoreline South 148 station pickup drop-off loop has been designed so it can flex into a gathering space. The center island is designed to be a little low-level stage with some seating off on the edge. Both stations have water and electric available for if Sound Transit's amenable to food carts or to a tailgate party, use of the pickup drop-off loop. But how that would work is still to be worked out with Sound Transit.
I think as an agency, we're trying to be nimble as we do this. The expansion for us over the next few years is just huge. And so I think one thing that I'm trying to do in this role is take the feedback that we actually get and utilize it. It's hard when we're dealing with such a large mega project, but I think that we can do it, especially if we're working together.
Never mind, I'll let. Ignore me.
I hear a lot about tree replacement and that there will be more trees. Who's accountable for making sure the trees stay alive?
Sound Transit.
It's, I mean, that's accurate.
So each jurisdiction has a different level of tree maintenance duration. In Shoreline, the street and on-site trees, we require 3 years for most of them. If they're on a steep slope or near a wetland, it's 5 years. If it's in Ronald Bog, it's 10 years. And if it's a WashDOT-owned tree, it's 13 years. So Sound Transit is going to be taking care of trees for quite a while.
Yeah, and I think I should know this one too. I want to say it's 9 years for Sound Transit, but I could be wrong. It could be longer. I just pulled the report up the other day, and of course I don't have that.
Oh, in terms of what Sound Transit
Yeah.
does, in terms of the city-owned trees and resources, you're done at 3 years or 5 years, depending. And then there's some of the landscape areas along the tracks and obviously on the station sites that they get as long as the train system is in service. And yes, there are a lot more trees than were taken out. I don't have the final numbers memorized, but I'd be happy to follow up with you if you wanted to reach out to me. They had to go back in at the same proportion of conifers to deciduous as was taken out. That said, they're actually putting in more trees than are required because we don't give them credit for non-native species or cultivars. So there's a whole bunch of other street trees that don't meet the replacement tree requirements, mostly deciduous, that they're also putting in. So they're exceeding the city's replacement requirements in that regard.
Why put in trees that don't count?
Because they have to for a streetscape. Most of the natives are not compatible with utilities and streets and sidewalks. Case in point is the meandering sidewalks that had to be built on 5th and 15th around the old trees. But so that the street trees are ones that are specifically approved to be built next to those types of infrastructure. And usually there's not room for the larger native conifers in our street rights of way because of all the other infrastructure that has to be in them. So yes, they still have to plant the street trees. They just don't count as replacement trees. If they take them down, they have to replace them. But Sound Transit was specifically required for their replacement trees to be native. That is not true of all development. I think she wants to give you the microphone.
Thank you.
I'm on 184th and 9th, so super close to the 185th station. And just over the years, as this has been in progress, some observations and suggestions I have that are, I think, too specific for this is who would I go to or talk to?
Me, I've got cards here. I'll make sure that my information
Okay.
is sent out
Thank
with
you.
whatever presentation here is put online.
And if you've got immediate concerns and issues for the next 6 months, reach out to me. I don't know what time this is supposed to wrap up. Are we past time or
No,
10 more minutes?
We're fine.
Kendall, can you help me switch which one is shared on Zoom so I can, I've got a drone video from the L200 contractor I want to run. It may be a little glitchy on the screen, but I'd like to give it a try.
While we're doing that, do we have any questions online or are we good?
We do not.
Okay.
They're quiet. Yes, let me unmute myself here. Yes, this will be available. The recording of it will be on the CityLearn webpage. Give us a few days. We're trying to actually figure out how to set this up as YouTube videos.
So we just started at 145th. We're going over the Shoreline North 148 station site. On the left, you see a yellow crane that is building the piers for the 148th Ped Bridge. And off to the right, there's a vacant set of lots that is one of the transit oriented developments that had to delay because of the construction financing market that hopefully will pick up again soon. So the gray area in there will be the trails that connect the pedestrian bridge north and south through there. And you'll recognize a little bit of this. I did pull some screenshots along the way. Happy to answer questions. The artist for the South Station, for those of you who may not remember from the open houses years ago, is a gentleman named Buster Simpson. He is a local Seattle area artist that loves to work with stormwater. So the artwork will bring the water from the roof of the garage through bright blue pipes that look kind of like industrial scaffolding out to these cairns made out of stormwater like the things that normally go underground for stormwater are stacked. And at the south side of the garage, it'll run along the top of a retaining a noise wall and drip down, and it's supposed to turn green and grow stuff.
Thing off the top
That
goes over the driveway.
Yes, so at the
That's what
north
she
end, there's one of those that goes across over the pickup drop-off loop to another cairn on the north end. On the south end, it goes over the pedestrian walkway. It doesn't quite come from the top, it comes out sort of from the middle. And on the south side of the building, there'll be a sundial as well. The Shoreline North 185th Station site is from an Arizona-based artist named Mary Lucking. And she's got metal weeds growing out of cracks and crevices, inspired by plants growing everywhere in the Northwest. Both stations also have a theme of evergreen trees for their landscape design. So there's inlaid metal bands that mimic the shape of Doug fir at the north station site, and cedar at the south station site. Benches made to look like the needles of, it's really abstract. The metal panels around the north garage are also pine needle inspired, or Doug fir needle inspired. We're getting to Ridgecrest Park here. And again, our construction, our city project is going full bore there on the right, and Sound Transit's putting down the landscape topsoil, and we'll be grass sitting fairly soon on the left. I'm happy to answer questions while this is running. I apologize for it being glitchy.
What will your job be once this project is done?
Excellent questions. Shoreline's got me till the end of the year, and then I'll be figuring that out.
There is a question online.
Okay.
Is there any sort of chance for a ride along during train testing over the new tracks? I know important people get to do it. What about really excited local transit lovers?
I love that question, and they're not the first person to ask it. Likely not. And it really comes down to safety. Today, it's still, both sides are still active construction. And even once they aren't, with the TCOs and what's in place in terms of safety and what the contractors have to do, we don't allow people on the site. That said, I'll be out there bright and early on that Saturday morning when we do open, and I would welcome everybody to join us. I'm already working with the city and with our other jurisdictional partners in terms of what they want these opening day celebrations to look like at each of the stations. It should be a party. It should be a lot of fun. As I'm working on Eastlink right now and they're preparing for that, we've got Microsoft and Amazon helping them think about like cool things we can do. I can't say what they're going to do, but it's awesome. And, those folks still recognize, all the big businesses in the region realize that they have to support the one line too, because the one and the two line are going to be connected. This really will change the region. And so let's celebrate it.
Sorry, you said that's Saturday, September 7th?
After July, before December.
Yeah. We won't creep into winter though.
Unless you want to keep me employed for another year or two. Any other questions, comments?
After July and before December, you're talking about Shoreline.
So all 4 stations will
At
open
once.
at the same time. So you'll be able to get all the way from Lynnwood to Angle Lake.
I should know these. Okay, so let's see. If you were gonna go from Shoreline to University of Washington Station, it's no, it's like short 13 minutes. And then, so the one I know, Lynnwood to downtown Seattle is, oh God, I'm gonna blank on all these right now. Of course, they are, some of them are posted on the slide, so if I look at that, but, it's pretty quick. I think when you look at Lynnwood to like far Redmond, that trip becomes longer, but, what I had roughly was from Shoreline South to downtown is 18 minutes. Shoreline South to University of Washington is 11 minutes. Mount Lake Terrace to Northgate's 10 minutes. So it really cuts down if you're trying to get somewhere. And what I would suggest to people when it opens up is, sure, go to a game. The games are great for this, but if you have kids or if you want to go on a date, just pick a station and just go there and walk and see what you can do. I took my daughter for the first time. We went to University of Washington, got out, we walked to U Village. It was a mile walk with a 4-year-old. It isn't great, but we had a blast, and I would have never done it had we not done it. And so just be curious and explore a little bit, because that's where we really make this thing work.
Okay, so be curious. Northgate Station, just a whole bunch of their parking just went away because new multifamily housing is going in on one of the parking lots that was being used for the light rail station. Any plans to replace the parking that's being
So
lost?
are you talking about the King County Metro parking there, the service lot?
Yep.
Not to my knowledge. I think what we're focused on as an agency is working with the partners to make sure that there's more of those east-west connections. That really, there's always going to be people that want to commute and just drive in the morning, park and leave. But we have to make it so that our agencies are working together so that it's easier to get to and from the stations. Because parking, we could build a 10-story parking garage at any of the stations and they'd be full. We've done that at Lynnwood. It's 4 stories, and it's 1,600 spaces, 1,675. And I guarantee you when that opens up, it will be full on those busy days.
This is the north end of the Shoreline North 185th station. There's that bit bridge from the transit loop over to the north end there, and the Connect Shoreline building that'll have a commercial space right down in this area. There's a trail that goes up to 189th. Trail along the rail would jog out is along 8th there, would jog around North City Elementary and up to that 195th Ped Bridge. Just to point things out.
And one thing I just point out about this station is having walked it for the first time recently where it felt like it was done. You'll get off of the train there or get on the train there and it feels like you're in a community. Not all the stations do that, but we try to make that happen when we can, because we want to create more community around these, because if everybody's using them, then naturally some of the, the issues that people are concerned, like with whatever issues they have with light rail, tend to not be as strong. So it's going to be a really cool station.
Here comes the microphone.
With light rails and the buses, like a metro, Sound Transit, and etc. Do they have some kind of like the transfer, like the bus transfer within 2-hour thing? Do they do that?
Yeah.
Because last time when I went to Northgate and then come back from U District, and when I get to the bus, they told me we're 2 different systems. We don't do transfer. So I just tap my Oka card again. I don't know what happened, but
Yeah, well, a common problem that happens is when you get on light rail, you're supposed to tap on and tap off.
I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
because a lot of times what happens is people tap on, they don't tap off, and then they go to transfer and it's confused. It sounds like you had a different issue. We've been moving towards the one card to really
Right, I
streamline it,
think
but-
it's just the driver may not know that.
Yeah.
Maybe when I tap again, they never charge me because they know. But she said, you gotta pay. We're 2 different systems.
Well, and what, I'm not the expert on how, how the fares work, but over the next several months, we're gonna be reaching out to the neighborhood associations. Mine was pinged on this, and so I'm hoping some folks showed up because of that. But we're gonna be doing smaller meetings like this with people that do the Orca cards, signing people up for Orca Lift if people need help with that. There's a lot of work that has to be done between now and when we open this thing to get everybody ready. I want it to be as easy as possible for everybody. And so part of that is getting out in the community and talking to folks that are interested about listening. So I'll make sure that next time we have that, the city helps us get it
The
out.
bus driver knows.
Yeah.
And also maybe put it on your website more clearly, because I try to find exactly, because if you go to the Metro bus, transfer between bus is very clear.
Mhm.
Within 2 hours, you can go. But on the light rail website, they don't have it clearly said. You can transfer.
Yeah, and it's something
I-
that I think the agencies have been working towards.
Right.
I couldn't speak to it with authority of what exactly the system looks like in terms of what points are, where the transfer points are, so.
Yeah, you probably in the future, put on the website, people can see it.
I do have an online question.
Yeah.
Just a second here. Okay, somebody actually commented that there's tons of parking at North Gate. It's just not all free. So there is that aspect.
Yes, that is very
Um,
true.
Chuck would like to know, just south of the bridge on 185th is an island of storage, tanks and containers. What is being stored there?
So the tanks are part of the surface water discharge system, and there were 5 or 6 different basins in from North Gate to the north end of Shoreline that they had to collect, pump, treat, do water quality treatment, and then slowly discharge the stormwater from the construction site. Those are slowly being downsized. I think there's another one in one of the clover leaves at the North Gate interchange. So it's part of the state requirements for stormwater quality and conveyance treatment during very large construction sites. They have to set up many water treatment systems and storage systems. And they use those modular, they call them Baker tanks. I don't know where that name comes from. And that'll be replanted and turned back over to WashDOT when they're done. Number of the remnant properties, especially from 175th up to 180th, there's a bunch of little bits and pieces of former residential properties. Some of the properties that Sound Transit went through are areas called resource conservation areas. The federal highway system requires beautification along the highways, and in the Northwest, that means evergreen vegetation on parcels next to the freeway. Some of those now have trains in them. They have to replace them since they took big trees and put small ones back. The area they had to replace is bigger than what they took up. So those are being planted with very small plants that all have a very high success rate. And those will be vegetation between the residential neighborhoods and the freeways to meet the federal system. On top of that, there's landscape buffers that the city required, and WashDOT didn't want our landscape requirements to apply to their properties, so you got extra. So there's a nice vegetative corridor. It will take a while for it to grow, but that's a good chunk of where those replacement trees are going.
Maybe a quick question. I've parked at the big lot at Northgate Park and Ride before and had to climb over to my driver's side to get out, or, had to be really careful not to scratch the car next to me because the spaces are so tight, even for medium to small size cars. What is the parking like in these garages? Is the space between?
City of Shoreline requires 8.5 feet wide for standard parking stall. Any stall that is narrower or shorter than our standard 8.5 by 16 has to be labeled compact. And there's extra space required next to columns and walls. So I don't know how that compares to Seattle's. I think my car just got bigger. I definitely have a harder time parking now that I've got a minivan, but I don't know how it compares to others, but it should be similar to most of the parking lots in Shoreline. 25% can be compact.
And yeah, I just parked at 148 the other day and it didn't feel significantly bigger, but it didn't feel significantly small. I can certainly look that up and see what it is, because it's interesting how parking has been so much of the work that we do, even though it's just this little piece of it, but yeah.
And
If you
then
have
you
an
can blame
F-150,
me
it
for
can be
parking
tough.
diagonal with my large car. Reality of driving your own vehicle, so don't. I'm teasing you. It's late. I'm a little punchy.
Hi, there are currently bike lanes on Fifth Avenue Northeast, north of 155th Street. Are there plans to extend those to the station at 148th?
I believe it's in our long-term bike plan. I don't know what the schedule is for doing that. But Sound Transit's not painting those lines in. It becomes Sharrow north of the station. You're correct. But it is in our long-term plan. You could contact Jeff or Natasha to ask what the plans are for improving that part of Fifth.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I forgot what it was called, the trail.
Trail along the
Along
rail.
the rail. So if I understood correctly, there's gonna be all those sections you described. I'm assuming all of those sections will be accessible independently
Yes.
at the beginning,
Yep, they'll be like your local sidewalk, just extra wide.
and pending funding, is there a goal of when everything would be connected?
I don't think we've even gotten to that master plan stage. The funding they're seeking this year is to set that long-term plan of what can we do and what phasing we'd want and what order it would take. As I said, there's one tiny chunk to do to get from Northgate all the way to 155th. Beyond that, there's some really difficult spots and then there's easier spots. Getting across 175th, that's probably going to be the hardest one of all of them. If you try and go in the interchange, you'd have to go over the interchange to be safe. Otherwise, you've got to jog over and back in, which makes it a less desirable trail to take.
So Juniper, to help with that issue, since it's gonna be a while before the entire thing is connected and you have all of these loop arounds, can we get a map on the city website at some point sooner rather than later that shows all the alternative routes where the links do not exist for the rail along the trail?
I'd be happy to pass that request
where you
on to
have
Jeff
go-
and
where you have to go
Natasha.
Out on Third and up clear to Fifth and then back down and back over down to the trail. Because people will get really lost on all those dead end side streets.
Yes.
They could probably work with Cascade Bicycle Club. Yeah.
This is Jeff's passion. I'll make sure that that's passed on if he's not already working on it. I'm sure it's coming. Both the city and Sound Transit, as we build pieces, will be adding wayfinding at key intersections. I think Sound Transit's is focused a little more on those cars and people on the main arterials for how to get to the stations. And the city, as we build trail sections, will add our blue wayfinding signs of how to get to where you're going.
It's also something, I mean, I think there's a good idea there for our social media team to like take, hey, join us on this trip and kind of, we could show some of that stuff. They love doing things like this, so it's a good idea. I'll take back to them.
I could keep talking all night.
A question popped up, I didn't quite see it.
Is there another online question?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, there is. Is there going to be a safety separation barrier between bike lane and car lane in North 185th going to the rail station?
You'd have to take a closer look at the 185th corridor plan in terms of what will happen east and west of the light rail station. At the light rail station itself, there's a shared use width of path in front of the station on the north side, and I believe bike lanes on both directions, if I am remembering correctly. So it's not a separate barrier on the pavement. It's you're either in a bike lane with your paint or you're up on the sidewalk with the pedestrians going slower. Further along both on 185th and I cannot remember what's planned for 145th, but that is something that the city has looked at for various parts of our corridors. I think we're also looking at what the options are on 175th as we slowly move towards a corridor improvement there as well. Again, those are questions best directed to Jeff Raker and Natasha
Walters. I remember. Yes, yeah, that's right. We are at 8:45 now, so unless there are any last minute questions, let's call it a night. And again, the recording for this will be available on the CityLearn website and hopefully on YouTube. Look for that in the next probably 10 days or so.
Constance, what's the next CityLearn topic?
I can't, well, we will be talking about 145th. So that was just finalized today.
Thank you all very
Thanks a lot.
much.
Appreciate it. Do we have to turn these off or do they?
Don't-